Hello and welcome to Beyond the Scenes. My name is Andres Cuervo. Today I have another great interview with one of my friends, people in the industry, creatives, and we talk about things beyond what we do in the industry. And it's my pleasure to have my great friend, one of my best friends, Andrew Tucciarone. How about an experience? I don't know if it was maybe walking through Spain on the trail, or like
That was crazy.
something that definitely made you a different person. Like you could say, after this experience traveling, I can recognize that I've never been the same. Or
That's an interesting one, right? Because I think that one of the things that's always been crazy to me about traveling is that you're never the same, but it's kind of shocking how quickly you can get back to normal, right? Like the first week you'll get back and you'll say, oh my gosh, why is there so much chicken in this salad? Or why are our portion sizes so big? Or like, we've got to simplify. But then pretty quickly, whether you're coming back from Europe or India or anywhere, the weight of our culture begins to push you back down into that mold. And you have to fight crazy hard to even like make small changes that push you out of that mold, because the reality is we have a culture here and that culture is very strong, and it's going to be really difficult to actually truly change something. I mean, there's little things like not wearing shoes in the house after trips to Asia, but as far as like deep kind of like major change, I think it's hard for me to identify one or two things, because you travel to one country, it can be meaningful, and it's always meaningful, but you travel to 40 countries, I think it's a story involving police.
oh my, well, I got one, and it was in Russia. So I went to Russia, going on my way to Kazakhstan, and I'm there with a group of Puerto Ricans, and Puerto Ricans are Americans.
Yeah,
At
right.
least in their passport.
Of course, right.
But I'm the only Colombian, and I'm the only one with a Colombian passport. And so everybody goes through immigration, whatever, and then
They just go narco.
yeah, they just go Colombia, go to the little rooms. In Spanish we call it el cuartico, the little room, and I'm interrogated there. And so I have this, it's like a fanny pack that goes in your your underwear,
of course, yeah,
with the money,
safety pouch,
and I have the money for whatever I came for the whole month.
Well,
I didn't have much money, but that was everything I had for an entire month.
My gosh.
So they strip me down and they take my little pouch and they get all the money and they're going to confiscate it.
Yeah.
I'm like, one of my first 3 hours later, 3 hours in interrogation room, they taking all my money away. And the leader of a group, who is this Colombian lady, who, because now she is an American citizen, doesn't have to go through what I had to go. She comes and she starts asking the translator and being eminent. The translator, it was remarkable because when she was getting agitated, the translator was also getting agitated. She was mimicking everything. And then I see that the guys looked down and they gave me back the money and they let me go. And I was so intrigued, like, what just happened? What did she say? Like, it was incredible. I to this point, I don't remember what she said, but that was just such a stressful experience, because I could feel like I was back in the Iron Curtain type of scenario. It's
and you hear all these stories about Russia and Eastern Europe, how it's really one of the most corrupt possible places.
And so, but I didn't lose my money. I wasn't there for more than 3 hours. Everybody was outside just waiting with anticipation. Like, what just happened? Why do we have to wait 3 hours for that single person that was in there? And I had another one kind of similar in Guatemala. So we're going from El Salvador, from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, all the way through Central America. And sure enough, we're in a bus. The military convoy comes inside the bus. They check in passport. Oh, the Colombian. Wow.
Yeah.
And that time we have to pay them in order to let us go. And I was like, this is so unfair. But the leader of the group understood that That was the only
That's the
thing.
only way.
That's
Yeah.
the only way. In
Yeah.
some countries, that's the only way. As much as you want to, be different and promote
Yeah.
a different kind of approach.
You're in their
it's like
culture.
you're in their culture. That's how it works in those countries. So yeah, those are two of my
And you-
situations.
And you have to know that. You have to know that when you're in another country, you are not on your turf. That's one of the biggest things that people miss whenever they're traveling. Gosh, I remember I was traveling with this one American guy, and after a couple of days, I was asking the leader, like, what's going on with him? Why is he struggling so much? And he's like, well, we knew this and he knew this going in, but he won't eat any food other than American food. And he was literally starving. He had literally eaten almost nothing for like 4 days, right? And it was like mind blowing to me, because I don't have like a giant palate, but I also understand that like when you're in another context, like you have to basically give yourself over a little bit to that context and go with the flow. All right, I'll give you a couple. I'll give you one really good one because it's actually kind of funny. So, as a filmmaker, taking stuff through security, it's crazy, right? It's freaking crazy. I have a bunch of different techniques that I used over the years, especially in my early days before I had the ability to do things like car nets and actually do it the legal way. But the craziest was Rwanda has a very strict no drone policy. It's posted everywhere. I couldn't have missed it. You go into the airport, everywhere, drones, no drones, no drones, no drones. Register your drone or else you'll pay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As I'm going out, I'm like, they don't have any way to check if I'm bringing a drone in the country. What are they going to do? So we go in, shooting for a couple days, getting awesome drone footage, coffee plantations, dudes in boats. It was great. Awesome, right? Now we go to leave the country. And guess what? They check your bag when you are standing there. They scan your bag on the way out. So as we are leaving the airport, they scan the bag and it's drone time, right? So they bring the first guy out and he's like, what's going on with this? What's going on with your drone? And I'm like, oh yeah, just really, you're just shucking and jiving. When they're talking to you, you're just like, yeah, it's fine. It's cool. Got this drone, it's all good. And Rwanda is very not corrupt. So you can't offer them money. I know that that's going to be a problem. I'm literally and they're like, just wait. The supervisor's coming. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So about 45 minutes later, supervisor comes. He's not happy because I think it was like 8 p.m. So he's at home with his family. Dude has been trained in the United States. So he speaks flawless English. And he's just like, did you not see the signs? And I'm like, I did see the signs, but I didn't really understand. And we're here shooting for a nonprofit that's helping Rwandans. And he's like, I know. And that's fine. That's great. But we have laws. What if I came to your country and I broke your laws? And I swear, I don't know. I think the Holy Spirit came upon me because no. And I said, I bet if you came into America and you sped and you got pulled over by the police, they would probably let you off with a warning. So I think I just came into your country and I sped, but you could also let me off with a warning.
Wow.
And I don't know what happened. He just said, okay. And he's like, I'm writing you down. I'm writing you down in the book. You are in the book. You're in the book forever. And I was like, okay, I'm in the book. I'm getting on the plane.
Wow.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously I understand that a lot of my white privilege allows me to get away with a lot of crazy things. Like we got pulled over to try to do a bribe one time in Kenya. And we started to play with the police officers. Like, can we take pictures together with you? And eventually they just got so frustrated that they just left because they were like, whatever, I'm not going to get any money. And then one time in Zimbabwe, we had to walk a super long way. And there's different cultures. Different cultures are better with joking than others. And most of those sub-Saharan African cultures, you can have more fun with the police because they're not as serious. They are good at their jobs, but they're not serious. And we were walking and it was a super long walk. And we saw this police truck driving by and there was already 2 or 3 people in the back of the truck. And we were like, can we catch a ride to?
Wow.
And so there's this great picture of me and like our 2 other people on our trip, like in the back of the police truck, just like rocking it to try to get to our next location. Cause we were like, I don't have to walk all this way. Cause I think we were going to Victoria Falls on that trip,
Wow.
which is
Yeah. One of those places.
one of those places that, yeah, you film and you feel, you feel the power. So
I agree that traveling definitely at least opens you to experiences. Is your take, your like what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility to take those experiences, make something out of it.
yeah,
Open yourself to what it has to show you and learn. Open yourself to learn from another culture, because you can go and travel and never
Right.
really take something meaningful out of, like, oh, I just went to this touristic place.
Right.
I did these things, but because of our work, because of who we are,
Mhm.
we're immersed in places, situations,
Yep.
with people that if we're open, we can learn so
Right.
much. It can really enrich our lives. And then through that, our families, our friends, the relationships that we have. So I believe it's such a key important thing in our journey, being able and privileged to travel and learn from all these countries.
Even here in America,
Yeah.
like you remember whenever we were in Georgia, we were in South Georgia and we were filming, and they said, hey, tonight the farmer who you guys are featuring, he wants to invite you to a steak dinner at his place. And the younger people who were with us were like, we're tired, we're gonna get some Burger King. And Carlos and I were like,
Yeah.
somebody invites you to dinner at their house, you go, because it's probably going to be awesome. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was like one of the best steaks. What was it, pecans or walnuts?
Pecans.
Oh my gosh. It was
They're just amazing.
some of the best food and best like hangout time
Yeah.
that we had in years, just because we said yes. And I think that's what traveling, it helps you to learn to say yes.
Yeah. And I think in that particular experience, it wasn't only, having dinner with these people and the amazing food that we got. I do remember the type of conversations
Right.
and how they thought about their kids going to college,
Right.
the experiences, the fact that he's like, I'm not handing everything on a platter for my
Right.
kids. They're going to have to work. And you're like, wow, this is very interesting, because you would think that, their mentality is completely different.
No.
And then you can learn from some of those things just beyond having the nice dinner.
Right.
And that's the great takeaway.
Yeah, you can learn from people's experiences, from their point of view on child rearing and their point of view on finances or life or whatever they've got.
Mhm.
So
One thing that I think it was on that trip that you shared with me, the fact that you were training for marathons. The fact that
yes.
you were not only using that to be fit and,
Right.
exercise, but that was a coping mechanism that you
Yes,
were developing
absolutely.
to deal with the stress that
Right.
even in this industry we have to go through.
So
And
much stress.
and even as a tool to help you in your mental health. And I would
Right.
love to talk a little bit about how you got into that and
Yeah.
what is the benefit that you've getting.
Yeah, I'll talk about that. So I think that for me, running, it started off as something that was deeply tied to my mental health. And I mean, it always has been. But basically, I was an athlete in high school, and then starting the company, having family, I had become very unhealthy, some very unhealthy habits. And in about 2016, I had essentially like a multi-day panic attack where I like couldn't get out of bed. I was just like so anxious that I could like barely move. And I think that the wake-up call for me was like, you're not taking care of yourself. You're not moving your body. You're in your 30s and you feel like you're dying. I think I might have even just have turned 30 or something. It was crazy how bad I felt. And I just started to get back out there and run just for my mental health. And what that kind of led to was a journey of like, well, maybe if I can do this, I can do a little more. And maybe if I can do that, then I can do a little bit more. And then the next thing you know, I've done a half marathon. And then after that, I was like, well, let's do a marathon. And then after that, an ultra marathon, right? And I think that for me, when I talk about running, when I talk about athletics, it's the practice of not giving up. Because in our world, giving up is like the only thing you can't do. You got to stay in the game. And for me, I had gotten to the point where mentally and emotionally, I was feeling like I just couldn't stay in the game. And I think that for me, the marathoning and the ultra marathoning is like reminding myself that I can do hard things, reminding myself that I can go through hell and still find a way to finish. And I think that that has been really important for me. And then, of course, there's a lot of other benefits. I lost 40 pounds when I started doing that. And also, there's just a lot of time. You know, you get time to yourself. You're able to think. One of the important things as any creative will say is just to have large blocks of unstructured time. Having large blocks of unstructured time is one of the places that the most creative ideas come from. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I've come back from a run and I feel like I've solved everything. Most of the time I haven't, but you know, but there's that feeling, that euphoria, and then also just like that time to think. So yeah, so it's a big part of my kind of like weekly, monthly, yearly rhythm. And also it gives you things to look forward to. If you have a race planned, and again, you know, race, you know, coming in 1500th or something, right? Like you're not racing to win, but having an event to plan for allows you to think like, this really stinks, but in a couple weeks, I'm going to go do this event. And some of the events have been pretty special. Like I got to this past summer run a trail marathon in Verbier in Switzerland, which was one of the craziest things I've ever done in my entire life. But after it was over, man, I mean, I can't even tell you how good it feels, because you just know that like you were able to do it.
Yeah.
So,
And I think it's not only the benefit to your physical health, your mental health, because many people, I've heard people even in the news to say, you know, I'll rest when I die. You know, I'm going to keep busy. I can't stop.
Well, then you'll die at like 55, right? Like,
yeah,
that's true, but you'll die young.
And also the fact that we embrace the idea that I'm not a fitness person. I'm not a I'm a brain person. You know, I work with my hands. I do these things. I do enough exercise by lifting sandbags and doing that's not intentional going out. And I think another benefit is not only the discipline that you create for yourself,
right,
but also the perception that you get.
Yeah.
Because we've worked together in projects where it's almost time to get ready to go for cold time or whatever, and then Andrew comes and he's running and you're like, oh my goodness, I just woke up getting ready and this guy already ran 5 miles. And but the first part of the conversation is about your experience. It's about like, oh yeah, I run, and down the road there's this cool park. I think we can go there and have, you know, some shots in there. You're like, wow, there's so many things that discipline can bring to a team table, you know, to the experience of the team, that it can inspire people. It can also give people a sense of confidence of like, this guy's organized and disciplined. Like there's a side benefit of the discipline that you put into running that definitely talk about who you are to the rest of the team, including the client as well, you know.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. I never thought about that before, but hey, I'll take it. I mean, anything that can show that level of, I mean, because again, one of the hardest things about being a director or executive producer is you have to be in charge, and being in charge is about much more than technically having the power to say yes or no. It's you really have to have an aura of, I trust this guy and I'll follow him and I'll believe him whenever I disagree with him. And I think that, that's great.
And also the fact that you are experiencing that location in a very different way. You know, it's like many times we travel to a location, we go to the hotel, we go to the shoot, we go back to the hotel, and that's it.
And I've always thought from the very beginning of my career, that's crazy. I've always said and made it, unless the budget. Okay, actually, I'll tell you one more story. I know we that's too many stories. But the very first trip I went on, that Kenya trip, right? Towards the end of it, I mean, we did not make very much money as a family, but towards the end of it, there was a very high-level Chick-fil-A VP who we were shooting with, and he was like, we're going to go and do this trip to the Serengeti, and we're going to be there for like 2 or 3 days, and it's just this little bit more money. Do you want to come with us? And I was like, I'm going to be fiscally conservative and I can't afford the extra money. I can't be away from my wife. And I was like, I'm really young. I'm sure I'll get a chance to go to the Serengeti again. I was, in my 20s, right? I think this was in 2008, right? So this was a long time ago, right? Almost 20 years. And I've never been to the Serengeti. I missed that opportunity to spend time with an extremely important person that could have been very instrumental in my future career. And I also didn't get the experience of being able to see this thing, and I may never get it. And I think ever since then, I realized if you're going on a trip to India, don't look at the trip to the Taj Mahal or the trip to that special place as like, oh, that's just tourist stuff. Who cares? Don't go to India and not go to a tiger preserve and try and see the tigers. Like, there's a such thing as being too cool, right? And sometimes we're just too cool because, I'm a big filmmaker and I just will be in my hotel and I don't need to experience this stuff because I'm over it. I'm not a tourist. But I'm never like that. I'm like, let's see the cool restaurant. Let's go to that amazing park or memorial or thing that's listed, Let's go to the middle of Pennsylvania and spend time in that wood shop, right? And then go to downtown and have that tequila, right? Because to me, it's like, we're not just living to work, right? Our work, we're working to live. Work is a part of us, but it is not all of us. And whenever you live to work, that's how you burn out, because that's when everything is about the work and it's never about living. But whenever you keep work in its proper place in life, and then you live with the money that you make and the opportunities you get because of work, it makes you a lot happier. I mean, I think you would agree. You've been on trips with me. They're a lot more fun than just going straight to the hotel and like, I'll see you guys in a couple hours.
That's something you have to not only learn, but you have to work on that, because it takes effort
and money
and it takes investment.
Yeah.
But being conscious about the importance of that, and it takes, it comes with experience as well.
I agree.
It being exposed to and failures, because we have failed at experiencing places we don't know we can go back to. I went to the Galapagos Islands for over a week, and that's one of the most remarkable experience. And I haven't been able to go, and I don't know if I will ever be able to go back to the Galapagos. And sometimes you visit places that you don't know if they're going to be like that anymore.
Right.
Or you go for a particular project that gives you the access that you wouldn't have on your own.
That's got to be one of the best parts about working and traveling, is like getting entree into an experience that's so much deeper than just a tourist experience because of the people that you're with. I mean, so many times we're in places where if you just showed up with the camera, you would get rocks thrown at you. But if you show up with a camera with an organization that's been changing people's lives, then everybody's like, come to our house. Can we show you this? Can you, and I think it's just a very different way to see the world, and a better way to see the world, I think.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And through that, we also learn of the needs.
Yeah.
And how we could be part of perpetuating some of those things, or be part of changing stuff.
Right. Yeah.
In significant ways or small ways. I see that in your life through adoption.
Yeah.
And through actually taking a step forward and saying, I can be part of something that is meaningful. I don't know.
It's true
that way. How has your adoption journey, as a father been?
So the adoption journey has been pretty incredible, although, it's really, I always like to start with, I know a lot of people who have had very difficult adoption stories, like difficult with kind of the transition to living with the, adoptive family, issues with, home of origin, lots of issues, even issues with acceptance of the adopted, person into the family. And our adoption story has been pretty positive. Like, our son that we adopted as an infant, he has added so much to our family. He is just a bright light and a joy, and we've never hidden that he was adopted, and we've had lots of great conversations. And at least to this point, he's almost 10, it's all been pretty like positive. It's been pretty good, and there's not a whole lot of questioning of the whole thing, other than the normal kid stuff. But I will say that our adoption journey started with some of the traveling overseas, some of the seeing just, how many people didn't have a place to go. And, I think for us, we didn't feel called to do international adoption. We felt called to do domestic adoption. But we really, at the time, we looked at our table and we said, our table is not necessarily full. And because of our beliefs, we believe that God is saying, if your table isn't full, then, fill it. Because we have this love, we have this financial capacity, we have this space. And then my wife has a philosophy that no one should have to sit alone at Disney World. So you have to have even. So it's either 2 or 4. Yeah. And so we have 4 kids. Because of the fact that we believe that it was, our call to do this. But again, I think that some of it makes it sound much more noble than it is, because the reality is, like, it has been a joy. And our youngest has brought an outrageous amount of fun and laughter to our family. And yeah, I mean, it was a crazy situation, because when we adopted him, we were told that 2 other families before us had passed on him, because he had some of the markers of what they thought could have been fetal alcohol syndrome. And if you don't know anything about FAS, it's really bad. It can lead to a lot of lifelong learning disabilities. And we prayed about it, and we met with the mother who was taking care of the interim care mother, and she told us that after lots of qualifications, told us that she thought that actually there was nothing wrong with the baby, and that God was just preserving him for who his actual family should be. So my wife and I, we hear this, we've been praying, we both start crying, and we were like, we're adopting him. And when we said that, we were like, let's just do this. And the next day, we brought him home. Making me emotional here, Carlos. Pour some more tequila. No, so that's the short version of it. But I mean, I think, I don't know, it's been a rough time for us filmmakers. It's been rough. But the truth of the matter is, our entire lives are faith, right? Our lives, our work, it's faith, because we are, in some senses, we are living for the next project, for the next job. And that is, it feels like it's a very unsteady existence. But the truth of the matter is, people who work classic or traditional jobs, they could lose their job tomorrow. Layoffs happen all the time. And we have lots of skills, lots of opportunities that people who are not in the traditional workforce don't have. So I think it's one of those things where it's we do live on faith, but I think it's not that much more faith than it takes to live in this world, period. I think it's just that we're much more aware of it. We have to live by faith every project, every day, every time we look at that calendar and there's nothing on it. We have to live by faith. And so, I don't know.
Because at the end of the day, faith, us hoping of something that is not happening yet, is very untangible. It's not a physical thing,
right?
But worrying about something that has not happened yet,
right,
is also not tangible, and it also requires energy. And you can either invest your energy in one of the two, or the two at the same time, but it's your choice.
Yeah.
You can put your energy into hoping for something that is not there yet, or you can put your energy into worrying about something that is not there yet.
And you can have grace with yourself whenever you can't do that, because there's days whenever I can be hopeful and positive and optimistic, and there's other days where I just can't. And I think that that's also why, I also am a very strong believer in therapy as well. So having a good therapist, having a good coach, having some friends that you can just text and be like, this sucks. I've got one buddy, shout out Andrew Holly. Literally, I can just text him and be like, bro, I feel really down. And he'll just be like, here's the reasons why you're amazing.
Mm.
And I'm like,
Oh, here the things call you out.
Yeah.
Be honest and say,
Right.
hey, bro,
Yes.
this is happening. Like
yes,
this, that.
like don't get down on yourself. Like that's not going to be productive. And I think it's just important. It's important to have friends, because being inundated and isolated, that's where you go to dark places. Us building this continued friendship and talking about these things is a much net positive, as opposed to just stewing your thoughts and being alone. So-
Now, there's an intersection of like faith and, for example, your adoption journey,
Right.
where I think, and I might be wrong, but sometimes traditionally there's much emphasis on, abortion as a topic that
Right.
it can be manipulated politically and not much on adoption
Right.
as an answer
Yeah.
to a situation that has been politicized so much. I don't know what is your
You're
take
about to make me go political here, but I will say this. At the end of the day, I was raised by two people that believed in the sanctity of human life for real. They really and truly believed that we should be a pro-life world. And being a pro-life world is about a lot more than just being morally opposed to abortion, or, it's about a whole theory of life. It's about being against the death penalty. It's about being for the mother after she's had the baby. Both of my parents sacrificed to work at a place that would give young mothers, a leg up, give them money, give them things, because the reality is politicians will take these issues that are close to us and they will twist them, and then we use them as wedge issues. Meanwhile, personally, they don't believe in it. Personally, they've had, 3 different marriages, right? Personally, they've paid for abortions. Personally, they're extremely unmoral, but they're going to use this issue to try to divide people. When in reality, what actually matters is if I have a personal value, then I have to live that personal value. So whenever we adopted our son, it was not to own people who don't believe the same as us. It was to just love. And I think that is what's missing in our political discussion right now, is you believe differently than me. I will respect your right to do that, and I will love you because that's what I'm called to do. But I won't hold you responsible for the things that I have as my faith, and the things that we can disagree with, because there's things that I believe are universal truths, and there's things that we can debate in society. But whenever it comes like you're on my side or you want to murder babies, right? Like, these are unhelpful conversations, and they're conversations that can't be had in a wider discourse, which they have to, because laws have to be made, which is why I'm never going to be a politician, because I don't know how to navigate those, right?
Yeah.
All I know how to do is to just try and live my life the way that I want to try to live my life.
But in line with that is also, if we look at the past, if we look at history, we can also see that, faith movements were also the stewards
Right.
of social movements.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's almost like they drifted apart.
Right.
At one point, these organizations that initiated, the Salvation Army and, all these organizations almost like gave their place to the government as a responsibility in a way, or gave way to the government to take.
I think I have maybe a slightly different take. I think that one of the issues in our society is that when you live in a pluralistic society, when you have different beliefs, expecting and building a government that expects for people to solve social problems, that worked whenever we all had like a similar idea of what that would look like. But when you live in a more pluralistic and in a more in a less in a society we live in now, you don't have this this real sense of like giving back. The greed that exists in our society right now, to me, makes it necessary for the government to take on that burden and that responsibility of people, because trusting everything to a few benevolent dictators, which is basically what we're going into. We're going into a world where we're all ruled by benevolent dictators, feudals. We're moving into like a nouveau feudal society where you have to be close to a feudal lord to make your life work. You have to have a feudal lord that's your, person who pays for your projects or pays for your community center. Like, that's because there's too much money being allowed to stay in the space. There's too much money. And because of the amount of money that's in private hands, the government doesn't actually have the ability to solve the problems that they could solve if they had the money. I just look at it like this. In the 1970s and 80s, whenever we had the middle class actually strong, the average worker made 30 times less than the average CEO. Today, the average worker makes 324 times less than the average CEO. So you're living in an era where income inequality is similar to the 1920s, right? And there's only two ways that ends. Either one, somebody in the government takes over and starts saying, I don't care where this money goes from, but some of it's got to get out of the system. It's either got to go back to the people in terms of distribution to the poor, or it has to go into government programs, but it cannot be held in the hands of a few wealthy, or revolution. Because every system is governed by the consent of the people. And at some point, Carlos, the people have had enough. I mean, when we look at this situation that happened with the United Healthcare guy, right?
Yeah.
This guy is not a fluke. He is like a stand-in for a system that's broken. There's only one person that's willing to commit a horrible, violent act, but he represents all of the oppressed people who felt that way and didn't do anything about it. And what I'm saying is we have two choices. We either find a way to be more fair to the poor, to be more just to the poor, or the poor eventually are going to say, this is it. I've had enough. So I don't know.
And I'm what I see and what I believe is that a lot of your opinions are also based on your research and
Right.
your passion for history, which is another thing
Yes.
that we share in common.
Right.
We listen to The Rest is History.
Right. Shout out Tom Holland.
Yeah, there you go. But I think, that's another remarkable, aspect of our friendship.
Yeah.
We can find these points and agree that by looking at the past, we can also learn things that can help us move forward. So, and I wanted to ask you, what made you become so passionate about history and biographies and learn from that?
I mean, I think there's this joke that like when you're a man of a certain age, you like get to choose like World War II, Civil War, or like, Revolutionary War. Like you get to decide like which is it's like your Hogwarts house, right? Like, and I do think that there's some aspect of as you start to get into your 40s, you start to look around and you realize that you've probably been here about as long as you're going to be here. And you start to really think of like legacy and impact. And I think for me, over the course of the past year, reading, I think, 20 biographies of presidents, I was just trying to really process this moment in American history to try to understand, like, should I be worried? Should I not be worried? Somewhere in between. And I think because they always say, like, history doesn't repeat itself, but does rhyme. Right?
Okay.
It's not exactly the same, but it does rhyme with other periods in history. And I think that understanding that helps us to understand, what's next. And it also puts us into perspective because you're only born in a particular moment. We're born in a moment of the American experience being probably at its height of power and influence. And many empires have fallen. Some have fallen very quickly. Some have lasted for another 500 years. We don't know what point we're at in the American empire's experience, but we do know that we are at a deeply vulnerable point in the American empire. And we have to decide, what are we going to do with that? Because as Christians, we have to understand that we are not a part of this. We're in it, but we're not of it, right? And I think that Jesus wasn't American. I always say Jesus is much more right wing than we like and much more left wing than we like, right? He has opinions that don't track perfectly with politics. So we have to think to ourselves, how do I live in terms of Jesus' teachings? And how do I live with the wisdom of understanding, as a person who's traveled all over the world, that empires aren't forever, right? I mean, you and I have both seen enough refugees to understand that things can go from awesome to not awesome
Right.
super quick. And I don't want to think about that on a daily basis. I know you don't want to think about that, but we have to realize that, like, if this all starts to fall apart, we have to have a plan for our family and our kids. So
I think this interview podcast conversation is just a reflection of the admiration that I have for you,
Carlos, you're too
as
nice.
a neo-Renaissance
Yes.
man, And when I think of a Renaissance man, from the concept from the past is this people who can delve into the arts and, the politics. And
Right.
in your case, not only the arts and starting different businesses and also, having a family with an adopted kid and doing sports and trekking and adventures and traveling. I mean, this is almost
Tired
foreign
listening to
to
say this. No, I'm tired listening to you say that.
but I think in our world it also has to do with it's almost like a mindset. It's not as much as the opportunities that you have and the influence that you have, but it's also like a mindset. Like that's the core
A
of
learning
somebody,
mindset.
a learning, teachable attitude, teachable experience that bring forth these other things that make. What is your concept
Yeah, I think that it's
of a neo-Renaissance man?
and it's funny because I think that I don't think of it as a Renaissance man as much, because I'm always like, why do you not speak, more languages, or why do you not speak the languages you speak better, or why have you stopped playing your instrument? Like, I'm always more on top of myself of like, why am I not adding back in things, or why do I not, why can't it be great at all of these things at the same time? But I think for me, really what it comes down to is there's a really great book called The Growth Mindset. And the concept is that in life, there's growth mindsets and the fixed mindsets. And the person with the growth mindset is the person who is constantly accepting their limitations, but then using those limitations as ways to become a better version of themselves, and is able to ideate and see something that doesn't exist. Because honestly, the thing that differentiates us mentally from most animals is that we can visualize things that don't exist. Our ability to dream is our humanity. So I don't see myself as a Renaissance man. I see myself as someone who's trying to be a full human being, a person who's trying to experience what it means to be a full human being, because we only get so much time. And I want to be able to spend some of that time being a father, being an athlete, being a husband, being a business owner, being a friend, right? These are all things. There's this thing where they say that you have two sets of values. You have your resume values, and you have your eulogy values, right? And I think about that a lot, right? Your resume values are, I went to these places, I work for these clients, this is my capacities, my skills. Your eulogy values is, did you climb Mount Kilimanjaro? Were you married to the same spouse for your entire life? Did you make your marriage work? Did you have 4 kids? Are your kids doing good? Like, these are things that when you die, people will say about you, things that you will have done. And your resume values are important, but you have to live for your eulogy values too.
You recently shared a book with me. Part of the core of the book is like there is an intelligence that is malleable, that changes, that leads you or encourages you to almost like reinvent yourself.
Right.
And I feel like sometimes that can also comes through times of crisis and difficulty,
Right.
where
Yeah.
filmmakers and musicians and creatives could be challenged
Yeah.
to think differently and to think that their lives are more than their skill and
Right.
art, and that they could explore our possibilities and our things as we age and as we shift and as we're not, as sharp
Right.
and I would love to hear, your
Yeah.
take because
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
something
For
that you
sure. For
recommended
sure.
to
For
me.
sure. So the book is called From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. And man, it was a shocker for me whenever I read it, but it helped to really think. It really helped me to think about how I'm transitioning as a leader, from a young, kind of like hungry guy with lots of cool ideas, um, to an older leader who has to be better in different ways. The theory of the book is basically, as we're younger, we have a lot of fluid intelligence where we're really good at just like, pounding some coffee and just solving problems. But that as you get older, your brain changes and that becomes more difficult. So you might be less like genius, but as we get older, we also can start to transition into becoming a composer, because as you get older, you get way better at this sort of collected intelligence where you can take from this experience, take from that experience, and then put it all together into a package that can solve problems in a new way. And I think for me, it was really important because it helped me think about what needs to happen next in my career and how I'm going to transition from this young, hungry creative to a person who's able to combine all of the different creativities and thoughts. Like, I'm not going to be shooting as much, right? I'm not going to be doing a lot of things that I used to do before because those ideas are not coming as fast to me, but I am going to rely on other people. And it's just, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what some of your takeaways are.
No, I think that with the crystallized intelligence, which is that other part of the intelligence, you realize the potential that you have
Yeah.
to invest in other people
Right.
that just like you are at a certain point of their lives. And that's when mentorship comes as a calling, not as like the next thing in my resume. I
Right.
graduate to become a mentor. It's not a status thing.
That you desire.
It's a natural thing that comes with the desire to see other people also succeed and see yourself in other people
Right.
when they are at a certain place in their lives and their career, but also start seeing yourself as somebody that can seek for that,
Right.
but that can appreciate other mentors, that can appreciate other people at different stages, and that is not necessarily gonna give up and feel like you were saying, like quitting just because things
Right.
are not working the same. It could be very frustrating,
Right.
but it's the decisions that you make in this critical time that could determine
Mm-hmm.
how you're gonna spend this other part of
Right.
your life.
Totally.
Thinking many people in our industry do not think about the future in the same way. They don't think about retirement. They don't think about
Yeah.
their long-term
They're just looking
health,
from
the
project to
impact.
project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from paycheck to paycheck, project to project, in the same group of
Mhm.
crew that there's moving from here there,
Right.
not making relationships out of there, not making choices out of it, not traveling and experiencing other things. And I feel like that is also important.
Totally.
Have that intelligence that allows you to think beyond what you can do in the moment and live, in the moment, and also plan for the future as well.
Yeah. I love it.
So that's what I think.
Cool.
Again, thank you
Man,
for
this was
coming
so
here.
great.
I think and I hope that this conversation not only inspire people, but also will be a point of connection.
Yeah.
And so people that will love to learn more about you,
Okay. Yeah.
projects that you're doing, how can they connect with you? And
Yeah, so we're at Rolado.agency, and that's our home on the World Wide Web. And that's probably going to be the best way to get in touch with us or to get in touch with me. Also, I'm on the socials, but I mostly just post about my kids and my trips, which might be cool.
Yeah.
So if you just search for Andrew Tucciarone at Andrew Tucciarone on Instagram, then you'll find me.
yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Andrew. And thank you for watching. And I hope that if you find value in these interviews, in these conversations, you can share it on the web. And I'll see you in the next episode of Beyond the Scenes.